Hello, welcome back to EPG. I'm, of course, Greg, your host, coming to you from beautiful Sarajevo, Bosnia. So the question I get all the time is, Greg, why the hell do you love Bosnia so much, and why should I bother going there? Well, let me give you a couple reasons. Number one, it is incredibly economical. It is a fantastic place to come on vacation. Your euro or dollar goes a lot farther in other parts of Europe. Great food, great drinks, great people. And also there is history on every single corner, some of it pretty dark. And if you follow me along, I will show you some of it. So, of course, the first stop that we need to go to kind of start off this tour is the spot where Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated. And this is where it happened, right over here. So as you can see, I'm on a pretty busy thoroughfare, and if you recall from the previous video, I mentioned that there was an initial assassination attempt that was not successful on the Archduke, and it occurred exactly in this spot, as this plaque delineates. So it was two shots in a little sleepy town in the middle of Europe that changed the course of human history. Tourism has definitely picked up since I was here last. And behind me is the central mosque from Sarajevo. So Sarajevo is quite actually the meeting of East and West. So right now, the camera's facing east. I simply turn around. Now I'm facing west. Also, there's this nifty little plaque down here. So Sarajevo has been called the Jerusalem of Europe, because there are so many different religions living side by side. You have the Orthodox, you have Catholics, you have Muslims, and you have Jews that all live in relative harmony. It's also not uncommon to see a lot of interfaith friendships and relationships, so lots of interfaith marrying here. Quick side quest, if you're looking for the best cevapi in all of Sarajevo, I would come to Sedef. It's the first place I had it, and is the best that I've ever had. I'll put the address down in the description. After almost a century of violence, war, all sorts of terrible things that happened in Bosnia, it's very easy to forget that they also hosted the 1984 Winter Olympics, as this plaque on the ground commemorates. So after World War I, the two major empires that once ruled Bosnia were no more. It was the Ottoman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So what happened was Bosnia was put into a kind of collective association of states in the Balkans with Croatia, a couple others. And that lasted for a little bit until they were invaded by the Nazis in World War II. And they faced pretty hard repression from a lot of sides, people who sided with the Nazis and also people who kind of fought for themselves and, you know, their country. So behind me, right over here, is the Eternal Flame, but as you can see, it is under construction, so semi-eternal flame. But I'm just going to bring it up over here so I can show you what it looks like on the inside. Yeah, hopefully that gets back into use very quickly. So after World War II, Bosnia and several other countries were grouped together into the land of Southern Slavs, or Yugoslavia, by one man who was a partisan fighter during the war. Now I could do a whole series of videos about Tito, but the thing is that he was able to rule Yugoslavia for 35 years until his death in 1980. He did a lot of great things for Yugoslavia, but he was a communist dictator. Uniquely, he was not kind of at Stalin's beck and call like a lot of the other socialist republics, because he was a partisan during World War II and fought basically on his own with his partisan group against the Nazis when they were here. So Stalin really didn't have any rights to anything in Yugoslavia, and Stalin, being kind of a megalomaniacal maniac, sent several assassins to take out Tito. They all failed. So Tito, being Tito, wrote a letter to Stalin saying, stop sending assassins to take me out, or I will send one to Moscow and I won't need to send a second. Fortunately, or unfortunately, Tito would never have to live up to that promise of sending an assassin to take out Stalin, because Father Time did it in 1953. So with Stalin gone, Tito was able to rule Yugoslavia for the next 35 years, as I mentioned before, until 1980. So one of the things that Tito did when he was in charge of the military was made sure to billet soldiers where they were not from. So, for example, Serbians would go to Bosnia, Bosnians would go to Montenegro, Montenegrins would go to Croatia, etc. So that way they could foster kind of a national identity of Yugoslavia. With the death of Tito in 1980, the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, as well as the trial and execution of Nicolae Ceausescu, and then the eventual dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, the future of Yugoslavia and all the countries within hung in the balance. As hard as Tito tried to unite everybody under the Yugoslav banner, after he was gone, the ethnic ties proved too much to keep everybody together. If you're interested about this time frame, there is a fantastic documentary done by the BBC called The Death of Yugoslavia. The one name that you need to remember from this period is Slobodan Milosevic, who was the president of Serbia. And during his reign, he thought of the Greater Serbia Project, which was to retake lands in neighboring Bosnia, which had been ceded to the Ottoman Turks when they invaded the region a few hundred years before. So in order to try to break the will of the people of Bosnia, the Chetniks, or the Serb ultranationalists that would become the Army of the Republic of Srpska, took positions all around Sarajevo. So it's hard to tell, but there's kind of mountain range here, and the city is surrounded by mountains. So they set up artillery on those mountains up there and bombarded the city. So this right here is called a Sarajevo Rose. And what that is it commemorates a spot where a grenade landed or an artillery shell landed that exploded during the siege of Sarajevo. And they have them all dotted all throughout the city. One of the more terrifying aspects of the siege of Sarajevo was something known as Sniper's Alley. Besides setting up artillery on the mountains surrounding Sarajevo, snipers would also set up in some of the buildings and draw beads on people in the city just going about their everyday life. This memorial right over here commemorates the first victims of the siege of Sarajevo, and thus its start. Now, the siege of Sarajevo lasted 3 times longer than the siege of Stalingrad. So it was 1,425 days, starting in 1992 and ending in 1996. It's amazing how anybody survived, really. So this is a building right next to that plaque. And you can see that all those little holes there, those are bullet holes, and some of the bigger ones are artillery shells. The important thing to realize is that a sniper wouldn't know if you were Muslim, wouldn't know if you were Jewish or Orthodox or Catholic. They wouldn't know if you were Serbian, Croatian, Montenegrin, Bosnian. They'd just see a target and they'd pull the trigger. Also, another unsettling thing, there were rumors that there was war tourism going on, meaning that people would come here, pay the Army of the Republic of Srpska in order to hunt people. So there have been several investigations about that, including one that is being done in Italy right now. And behind me is the National and University Library, which in August of 1992 was deliberately set ablaze as a way to try to erase Bosnian history and culture from the face of the planet. This wasn't just a war to gain territory, this was a war to destroy the memory of a people. And an interesting side note about it, the books that could get out were smuggled throughout the city during the siege, kept in various homes by various scholars, moved in the dead of night in order to make sure they were protected. So with the siege of Sarajevo and the Bosnian War, as it would come to be called, international media needed a place to stay to cover the story. And this place, right here, was the former Holiday Inn where they stayed, now the Hotel Holiday. Now, there's one very important delineation that I want to make here, and it's that not all Serbs were bad. It was the Chetniks, the ones who were the ultranationalists who joined up with the Army of the Republika Srpska, who committed the war crimes and everything. But there were plenty of Bosnian Serbs that died as a result of the siege, as a result of being blown up by artillery shells, by being shot by snipers. So it was the Chetniks, those are the ones that were the bad guys in all of this. The worst Chetnik of all was a man by the name of Ratko Mladic. Now, if Slobodan Milosevic was the brain behind the Greater Serbia movement, Ratko was unfortunately the bloody hand behind it. He and his troops engaged in ethnic cleansing in a lot of Bosnia, all culminating in one single place. Srebrenica, the worst human atrocity since the end of World War II. So Srebrenica was a small town about 15 kilometers from the Serbian border. And that was supposed to be a safe haven for people who were fleeing for their lives from that part of eastern Bosnia. It was under UN protection, and supposedly, but that all changed when Ratko Mladic and his forces took a bunch of Dutch UN peacekeepers hostage, for lack of a better word, and said that he would kill every single one of them unless the UN left the area. And so subsequently, they did leave. And once they did, that's when the mass killing began. Roughly about 8,000 plus Bosniak, so Muslim Bosnian men and boys, were killed, tortured in disgustingly haunting ways that I don't want to put on film. Women and girls, if they weren't killed immediately, were funneled to rape camps, and basically the idea was that if they couldn't kill all of them, they would breed them out. Absolutely terrible. So the last time I was in Bosnia, I took a tour up to Srebrenica, saw the facility where these people were housed, waiting for the UN to make their decision. Also a couple places where there were some mass killings, the graveyard for the Bosniak men and boys, and I'll never forget it because we went into the countryside with this tour. We just happened upon a village that was very close to the Serbian border. Our guide went out into the town, started speaking Bosnian, and this little old woman came up and asked for us to join her on her patio. And we did, and she gave us Bosnian coffee and cakes and stuff. And then our guide asked, "So, tell us about your experience." And she went on to say that every single male member of her family, her husband, her son, her grandsons, were all killed in Srebrenica. And it's something I'll never forget. Now, while I would love to tell you that with the Dayton Agreement of 1995, everything in the rest of Bosnian history was fantastic. All the war criminals got caught and prosecuted. No further bad things happened in Bosnia. Unfortunately, that would not be the case. Slobodan Milosevic was arrested and tried for war crimes, and he died in jail. Ratko Mladic was arrested and tried for war crimes, and he's still in jail. Unfortunately, a lot of members of the Army of the Republika Srpska were never prosecuted. A lot of them still live in the same neighborhoods that they terrorized. Yeah. And it's still a wound in current Bosnia. One very friendly word of warning: if you decide to go to this museum, I would be ready to be totally emotionally wrecked and give yourself about an hour afterwards to process everything you see. It's rough. Now, I wish I could say after all that that nothing bad ever happened again in Bosnia, but unfortunately that's not the truth. In 1999, it was uncovered that there were UN contractors, DynCorp employees, UN personnel that were all involved in human trafficking coming through Bosnia. A lot of these people were Bosnian women, but even more were from the former USSR. Women and girls are being trafficked through the country. They're being put in brothels. And the worst part about it is that these supposed peacekeepers were using these brothels as well as buying people. So this was all uncovered by a former Nebraska cop by the name of Kathryn Bolkovac. And yeah, it was turned into a film later called The Whistleblower. So I often get asked, hey Greg, why do you study such dark history? And I have an answer, especially in this case. So 2 reasons. Number one is that I watched this war happen in Bosnia on television when I was growing up. I needed to do reports about it, I needed to study it, I needed to talk about it. So I wanted to learn more about it, and I had to learn more about it. Number 2 is that not a lot of people know how bad it can get to know how good they have it. So this is definitely something that a lot of people don't seem to understand in this modern world, is that it can get very bad, but you also need to be thankful for what you have. So I know there's a lot of dark history in Bosnia, but they're really trying to shed that. Remember it, honor it, respect it, but have this be a place of a lot more than just misery and war crimes and all that. I'm glad to see that a lot more people are showing up. And yeah, one of the highlights of the past year was actually seeing Bosnian team compete in the World Cup, and it did a lot for a lot of people here. Even though they didn't win, it was very much a source of pride for them. So one final thing, it is a legend that anybody that drinks from this fountain behind me was destined to return to Sarajevo. So I would very much like to return, and I would very much like for you to join me. So I say, let's share a drink. Thank you very much for your time, and get out there.